you wrote the question, do the Kings have a big three? And you wrote Sabonis, Fox, and DeRozan. Good early on. Do they have the pieces to make it work long term? And this is I think in the context of a big three, I think yes. When you have three guys that are 20 points a night, you have a guy like Sabonis who's a walking triple double, and you have a guy like De'Aaron Fox who could average 27 and 10. Like, yeah, you've got it. You've done it.
Mm-hmm.
The question for me is less, do they have a big three? And more like, okay, if they do, then you need to be inside of a championship window. Because DeMar DeRozan's 35 years old.
Yes.
This is not, don't suspend disbelief for a second. Remove DeMar DeRozan, and Keegan Murray is DeMar DeRozan. Keegan Murray, at his age, is 20 a night, can distribute a little bit, go-to player, high usage player. So we're including now, like, yeah, this window's wide open.
Mm-hmm.
You have three players who are well under 30, who are either entering their prime or in the middle of their prime. Like, yep, it's now. And you have this extended window theoretically. With DeMar DeRozan, you're looking at 3 years max. If this is the big three, to me, that means you're pushing chips in. You're going for it now.
No, I totally agree. And that's where I think we keep coming back to, hey, you're a piece or two away. Like, that you need to do this. You need to go find this type of player if you're going to take the next step. Like, we keep saying it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we can see the same thing. Like, I agree with you, Kyle. I agree that they are on the cusp of something.
Yeah.
They are right there, but we're not quite sure that they have all the pieces. So I do think at this point that right now I look at this team and they do have a big three.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's LeBron, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade.
I don't think just real quick on that. I don't think we're ever going to see that again, by the way.
No.
I think the era of the super team is mostly over. And I think Kevin Durant killed it.
Oh, no, I think so too.
The reaction to Kevin Durant leaving Oklahoma City and joining Golden State was, I think, so negative. And I think it has adversely impacted his career to the point that players like Giannis, Luka, maybe even Zion are looking at Wemby are looking at their situations and going, I'd rather just stay here.
Yeah, I can see that, man. And I also think that there's a possibility that, like, if you look at the way, like, the negativity has hit him, he's gone from a guy who I think a lot of people were willing to put him in a top 10 player of all time to, like, he's more of an afterthought in that conversation now because of the way it happened, because of, and I don't think it's fair because I think everyone was doing it. Like, all the kids, cool kids were doing it. So why is it not okay for Kevin Durant to do it? And for whatever reason, he is the guy that gets all the backlash where, come on, LeBron and Chris Bosh joining forces with Dwayne Wade in Miami, like, whatever. Like, that, to me, that big three is probably the most artificial big three.
Yeah.
Durant joining the Warriors. Like, again, he did that because he was so tired of being on an island. And if his team won, he got the praise. And if his team lost, he's a bum and it's all on him.
Yeah.
And it was every single night of that for years where it was Kevin Durant or bust. And so I get it.
What was the newspaper? Mr. Unreliable?
Was
it the Oklahoma City newspaper?
Oh,
yeah. Front page with the big headline? Like, that's tough.
No, all of it. I mean, like, people that you talk to every day as media members, when he was gone from there, they roasted him.
Yeah.
Roasted him.
Yeah, man.
And it's like, hey, like, we're not friends, but, like, we've been, like, cordial people that have to work together and have conversations every day. And now you're going to, like, burn me to the ground?
Yeah.
Like, ooh.
I do think it's interesting how, and we'll get this back to the Kings here in a second, but LeBron got his first title, was first two titles there in Miami. And then he goes and he gets one in Cleveland, and now he's gone and he's got one in LA. I'm really interested to see how because that okay, he's got his rings. He did the thing. Would he have gotten rings if he had stayed in Cleveland his whole career? Who knows? Like, I have no idea. But I'm interested to see how, in the context of like ring culture, how Dame's career in 10, 15, 20 years is viewed. Because I don't think Damian Lillard is going to win a ring. At least not as a primary dude on his team.
I would agree with you.
So I don't think he's ever going to get there as that dude. But is it like, oh, but respect to him for sticking it out in Portland, because he stayed in Portland through his prime, and now he's still awesome, but not quite the player that he was when he was leading those Portland teams to deep playoff runs? Or is it just that goes by the wayside, and like, yeah, hey, Dame just never won a ring. He can't be in that upper echelon of great player because of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I'm with you. I don't know where you put him in the upper echelon anyways. Like, he's a guy who had a really, really good run as a top-tier scorer. But he only made it to the Western Conference Championship, like, one time. And, like, I don't wanna be disrespectful, but, like, what's the difference between him and Trae Young? Yeah. Like, what's the difference? Like,
between Dame and Trae Young?
Yeah, I mean, like, you instantly are like, I can tell, like, your first instinct is go, "What are you talking about?"
Like, yeah, probably just because Dame's done it for longer. Like, that's I think that's probably the extent of it.
But at what point does Trae Young kind of enter that conversation? He made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. He did. He made it to the Eastern Conference Finals with Atlanta. Look at his points per game. Look at his assists per game. Like, so we hold some guys in such high esteem and others we don't. And whatever reason that is, it's tough because I think that, like, some guys just have the charisma, or that some guys, like, we glob onto them and they become stars where others don't. And I think, it's kind of the same thing we deal with De'Aaron Fox here in Sacramento. Like, how is it that Tyrese Halliburton is so beloved nationally? How is it that Donovan Mitchell is considered, player X, or again, Anthony Edwards, but De'Aaron Fox isn't? And there is no rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes it's a market, but Minnesota isn't that much. It's a big market, but it's not nearly as big as like New York or something.
Yeah.
But we consider him this, but Fox doesn't reach that plateau. It's just kind of sports. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like,
I think Security Bagley brought up an interesting point in the chatty house and basically said, like, Dame ran up against the Warriors. Like, prime Dame was peak Dame was 2015 through 2019.
Okay, but I'm going to give you that.
I think
for the
that's
Utah Jazz. I'm going to give you that for Karl Malone and John Stockton, that they ran up against the Chicago Bulls.
Sure.
And
Same thing
Michael
with Charles
Jordan.
Barkley.
Yeah, and Charles Barkley, and the same thing with Patrick Ewing. Like, okay, you ran up against like a buzzsaw. Like, Dame got there to West Conference Finals one time. Like, it's not like he was able to get to the finals.
I feel like though, and I could just be misremembering here, but it felt to me like, oops, how does Basketball Reference not let me type in Dame and get me to Damian Lillard? It felt to me like, yeah, they were in the playoffs every year. The Hawks are not in the playoffs every year. Yeah. Portland was regularly a very good team.
Yeah, but they weren't a top tier. They were, I mean, most of those years, even the year they made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, that was unexpected.
Trae Young's been in the playoffs 3 times, and he's gotten out of the first round once.
No, I get you, but like, compare the numbers: 25.5 and 9.5 assists. Like, is he as good a shooter? No, like,
no, I know. I'm saying I think Dame's more impactful.
Yeah, no, I would agree, but by what degree? We're not talking about like a guy who's got the team over the hump, and I'm not trying to disparage Damian Lillard. I'm just saying, like, there are certain guys in the league that like instantly become like cult heroes, and others that don't.
Sure. I think I think the one of the big differences is if Trae Young and the Hawks start going to the playoffs every year, and because with the Blazers it was always wing play, right? First it was LaMarcus Aldridge, and then they had Nurkic, and it was like, man, they have these And CJ McCollum is obviously there as well.
Yep.
But it was like Alan Crabb was supposed to be that dude.
Yeah. I mean, they had Robert Covington.
Yeah, Rocco, I guess, was there for a little bit, but they never had. It was always that. Like, man, they are a piece or two away from being like getting over, and they just never had it. So maybe if Trae Young and the Hawks start making the playoffs every single year, and he is the bona fide number one guy on that team, and they make another Eastern Conference Finals run, and basically, if his career shakes out like Dame's, then maybe I'd view it differently. But I just right now, I again, I don't have a empirical data to back this up, but I just feel like Dame is a way more impactful player.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you, but again, I don't know that what by what degree.
Sure.
You know, and I would say, like, while we're sitting here talking about Damian Lillard and sort of that team, right? Like the CJ McCollum, boy, they've got a bunch of former Kings on that team, just totally bizarre. Just totally. I mean, like, I don't even know. Seth Curry, first of all,
course.
Mo Harkless, Skal Labissiere.
This is the team that went to the conference finals?
Yeah. Nick Stauskas, Caleb Swanigan. Gary Trent was drafted by the Kings.
Caleb Swanigan, that's a pull.
Yeah. So but I was gonna make the point that team right there, if they had LaMarcus Aldridge, which they did not, if they had Aldridge, but the trio of Lillard, McCollum, and Aldridge, that kind of reminds me of the Kings right now. You know what I mean? So if you're gonna have a big three, it's that group. And then it's like, what do you have around them? How do you build around them? And I think what would separate the Kings right now and give me at least a little bit of positivity is that I think the group around the Kings' big three is better than a lot of other teams' group. Like the fact that you have Keegan Murray, who is a solid 15 to 18 points per game guy right now. The fact that you have one of the best 6 men in the league in Malik Monk that's going to post 15 points per game. The fact that you have Kevin Huerter, like, who averaged 15 points a game 2 years ago. Like, all of a sudden you're looking at a team that's very well-rounded and very versatile offensively and can score. Like, again, we'll get to whether they can defend or not.
Sure.
Or maybe we won't. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But to me, like, the question that we ask is, do they have a big three? I think they do.
Yeah.
They're the only current team with 3 players averaging over 20 points per game. And then are the other pieces good enough? Maybe you don't have the full depth that you need to be that good. And maybe you're missing a piece or two, but I still think the talent level of who they do have is really high.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but would you are the question for me is not, do they have a big three? Because they do.
Yeah.
And if you want to argue against that, I go for it, I guess. But if that's the case, if you're like, yep, this is a bona fide quote unquote big three, then you have to be a title contender now. You don't have a lot of years here where DeMar DeRozan is going to be part of that. And so the question for me is, you just listed out, hey, Keon Ellis has carved out a really nice niche, and we saw last year and then in Utah how impactful he can be without putting points on the board, and that's a really valuable asset to have coming off your bench if you're going to be a title contender. That's great. Kevin Huerter can shoot the leather off the ball. We all know that. Malik Monk should be the 6th man of the year, should be the reigning 6th man of the year, and is the
should
favorite,
be the 2-time reigning 6th man of the year,
and is the favorite to win that award again. Where are they falling short? Why aren't they in that conversation with Dallas or Oklahoma City or Minnesota or Denver in the West?
It's a good question, especially since the one piece that we keep talking about them missing is really a tertiary piece. It's like an 8th man or 9th man in the rotation piece, and another guy that can come in and defend, long, athletic, that can defend wings. We're not talking about a starter.
So that's that. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, but I mean, you get what I'm saying? It's like I don't know why they're not considered that, but the fact is they have to do it. And after winning 48, they took a step back and won 46. And we can point to all of these reasons why they didn't win 50 and how they could have easily won 50. But the fact is they did not.
Yeah.
And so it's on them to prove that who they are is a team that is a contender. It's not, we can't anoint them as a contender because there have
You
been
have to do it.
there's been a lot of paper champions,
Yeah, man.
right? A lot of big threes. Think how many times the Knicks put together a big three that wasn't a big three. And then
Or the Nets.
yeah, or how many times those teams, when they assembled a big three, and maybe their big three is a higher end big three than what the Kings have. Like the just overall like talent is a little bit higher than what the Kings have.
Mhm.
They never had the collection of players around them that the Kings have right now, which is
Yeah.
where I think, like, look, they've done a good job, but you can still see the whole. You can still see like where they need one more piece, and if they could find that one more piece, but what do you have to give up to get that piece, and like how do you do it?
That's it.
Yeah.
Like that's what you need. And I kind of disagree that it can be the ninth guy. I think that if you're going to be a title contender, I think that that person has to be more than behind Trey Lyles coming off the bench.
Okay, but what if it's a player right before Trey Lyles coming off the bench, or a player right before the Keon Ellis Trey Lyles grouping that coming off the bench? So it's, you got your starting five, you got Malik Monk. What if it's the sixth guy, the seventh guy?
Who do you have in mind? Like if you had, forget contracts, forget if the player's available. I am the czar of basketball, and I am letting the Kings take one player off a like, who's the ideal?
Well, I mean, like without going ridiculous, like, hey,
Yeah,
if
obviously
they had
Jason
Anthony
Tatum or
Davis
Anthony
to go
Davis, sure.
right next to
Sure.
no. So if I keep coming back to Bobby Portis. Like it's a guy who can play defense, who can block shots, who can rebound, who can hit a three, who can play with Sabonis, who can play without Sabonis as a center, who brings toughness and intensity and defense. That would be probably, like, whether he fits personality wise. I don't know. I don't know Bobby Portis. Like,
Sure.
he hasn't been in the Kings circle for like ever. So, but that would be the type of player, and I don't know if they can find him.
I mean, the wake up call just walked by. I'm sorry, and they were pointing at us.
Yeah.
Anyways,
they're ridiculous.
Look at Kevin. Look at him.
Oh my gosh, Kevin.
They look amazing. Okay, so you have to let Kevin know that he looks great, because he's very concerned that nobody's going to know who he is.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that he's just out there rocking a dress.
Okay.
So you got to let him know. Yeah, man. I like the Bobby Portis idea. I love that, but at the same time, like you said, who are you giving up to get him? Well, yeah. is all of a sudden you're not the calculus changes to get the same answer about, like, oh god, it feels like you have to give up Kevin Huerter to do that. Now you're like, oh man, they probably need another shooter.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the push pull. But man, you asked this question yesterday, and it's the first, because I've been operating this year like, yeah, just make the playoffs. But now it's like, man, if that's just the goal, is just to make the playoffs. And now you're going into next year where DeMar DeRozan's 36. And I saw TCG in the chat say, well, Keegan Murray is obviously going to be that next guy. And okay, like in theory.
Yeah.
But are you ready to bet on a game in, game out basis Keegan is going to go be as effective as Hall of Famer DeMar DeRozan? You're just ready to put that stamp right now?
No. And look, you're going to need that player either way. You're going to need the next DeMar DeRozan type player to plug into this thing, or maybe you're going to need the current version of Keegan Murray if Keegan Murray does take that step. Because if you have a 3-year window or a 2.5-year window or a 2-year window with DeMar DeRozan, like once that ends, like it's not like you're just going to elevate everybody up a step and DeMar's gone and everyone will just do more. Like, and at that point, you might have two $50 million players, a $30 million player, a $20 million player. Like that's what you're looking at. Like it's very difficult to keep adding once you get to this level.
Yeah.
And that's where the challenge is.
I will say I'm fascinated by, first of all, Security Bagley said, are you giving up a first round pick for Bobby Portis? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the Kings are going to be picking in the back of the first round. Give them up.
Yeah.
Give up the picks.
Without any question.
picks. You're trying to win you're now in that window if you're trying to win a title.
Yeah.
Because even if, okay, you have your first round pick and you're going to use it, the player may or may not play. So yeah, I'm giving up for the proven asset that can help you get over that. It's a steep cliff, or it's a steep hump to get over.
Yeah.
But like the Kings are at it, where all right, you're a really really good team. How do you get over the? Yeah, dude, unload the picks.
Mm-hmm.
I just that is not. I was there this offseason. I F them picks.
Well, I think that's where they were too, but
Mhm.
I just don't think that the deal
Yeah.
like material, and I think that they spent so much time swinging for the fences,
Mhm.
and realistically, you probably needed a strong single or another double.
Yeah.
A double
Yeah.
to. Sometimes you got to take a walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm really interested to see, because beating the brakes off the Jazz and the Blazers is great. I'm really interested to see what they look like against Dallas, what they look like against Oklahoma City. They lost to Minnesota, but played them well. I think played a really good game in the opener.
I'm excited to see their ramped up version, though. This
Yeah, man.
little stretch here where they're playing bad teams, you want them to win these games, but at the same time, you want them getting better every day.
Mhm.
And so when you do face one of those teams,
Yeah.
what do you look like then?
Yeah. And that's where we can rehash this conversation about Christmas. And